John Shipton, welcome to 7:30.
Good evening, Sarah. Good evening.
Now, just tell me first of all, when did you last speak to your son?
Day before yesterday, Julian gets a 10-minute phone call, we speak for that 10 minutes, and then it's guillotined by the jail.
And how was his state of mind in that phone call?
Since since the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, the Greens, and all the independents have made common statements in support of Julian, his mood, of course, is considerably elevated.
Now, as we saw, the Prime Minister, and you refer to the fact that this is a bipartisan position now, but he says this needs to be brought to a conclusion. What could that conclusion look like?
Well, for me, a conclusion would be that Julian comes home. You know, that's the conclusion that we've always moved towards and will continue to move towards. What the diplomats and the lawyers and Julian arrange is up to them. My job is to solely focus on bringing Julian home and speaking to the supporters wherever I can.
I mean, do you have any realistic expectations that the US would ever drop the espionage charges against him?
Yes, of course. They have done so previously under circumstances similar to this. And also, I wouldn't mind everybody that this prosecution was a decision of the White House in the Trump administration. So it was a decision made in the White House to prefer those charges through the instrument of the Department of Justice. So it's easily able for President Biden to instruct his Department of Justice or instruct otherwise people within the White House to find a solution suitable to Julian and to the Prime Minister.
Now, you refer to the laying of the original charges, and that was under US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Well, he was the Secretary of State at the time, and he described Julian Assange at the time as a darling of terrorists, was the phrase he used then. Do you have any indication that the current administration holds a different view of him?
No, I don't have any contact with the current administration. In fact, I don't ask for it, although I have a letter on my desk now asking for a meeting with President Biden, which we'll send off in the next day or so. It's a good time, of course, to remind the President that it is a concern of the Australian people.
Now, we said that it's expected, although not certain, that President Biden will be in Australia this week. You say you've got a letter. What else can you do with President Biden in Australia if he comes to draw attention to Julian Assange's current predicament?
Well, we have Stella Assange coming. We have a press club meeting. We'll also have a meeting in Parliament. And on the 24th, we're having a rally in Hyde Park. Tomorrow, on the 20th, I go to a march in Sydney from the Town Hall to Pyrmont to Google offices. And on the 19th, we have another meeting in Nimbin and the Northern Rivers. So a constant flow of meetings and rallies and agitation to bring the matter to the attention of President Biden, and similarly to build support underneath the decisions of Prime Minister Albanese and his government.
Now, obviously, we're talking about charges and a desire by the US to extradite Julian Assange, but I want to go back to the human story here. There's obviously been a lot of concern over the years, in the time that he was in the Ecuadorian embassy and now in the 4 years that he's been in Belmarsh prison. There have been concerns about his mental health. How is he coping with this extended incarceration?
Oh, you know, the circumstances are dire. I don't much like focusing on this because it worries me. But in 2019, the United Nations Rapporteur on Torture, Professor Nils Melzer, released a 26-page report on the circumstances of Julian, concluding that he'd been psychologically tortured over the period of 7.5 years. The results of that, the manifestation of that psychological torture, were evaluated by 2 doctors who went to the jail with Professor Melzer, and that is in the report. So the damage is done. And recently Julian had a stroke which has lowered his left eyelid slightly, so looks like he's almost going to wink. So those are dire circumstances, which is a burden upon Julian and his family, and which we bring to the notice of everybody, that there's, you know, characterised by Nils Melzer in his report, we're watching a slow motion murder before our eyes.
John Shipton, on that note, thank you very much indeed for joining us and bringing us that update.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.